All right, everybody, let's get started. Good afternoon. Welcome to Understanding Crypto. Today, we're going to touch on all things crypto to give you a general understanding of this hot topic. Our panel is composed of some of our top agents who have researched and invested successfully in cryptocurrencies. It is important to note that no one here is a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, and everyone is strongly encouraged to do their own research if this is something they want to invest in. That said, let's welcome our panel, Laura Ertwine of the Laura Ertwine team, Jeremy Poley, My Philadelphia Photo, Scott Sepkowitz, Venture Philly, and Sean Dundon from the Summers team. Thank you all for joining us and taking part in this. It is much appreciated. I know this is a huge hot topic for a lot of people and a very gray area for a lot of people. So hopefully our panel today will be able to clear up some stuff for you. We're going to try to keep it as general and simple as possible for everybody. We will be doing a more advanced class in the future. Everybody take out your notebooks, your pens, make sure you write down your questions. At the end, we will have a Q&A session for everybody. So let's jump right into it. Let's start with the most basic. What is crypto? Laura, you want to take that one?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I think that the very basic definition of cryptocurrency is basically, it's just what it is, a digital currency that is used as an exchange of value. That you can use to be able to buy things or just exchange the cryptocurrency, and you can use this as a means to exchange it to anybody, anywhere, all over the world. I don't know, I think that's the basic foundation of it.
All right, sounds good. Anybody from the panel want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think one thing I think of is if you take a step back and you just ask the question, what is crypto? What is money? Is actually an interesting question when you really get into it. There's a lot of very boring or stupid college courses that are just trying to answer this question, and even they don't necessarily agree. Is a piece of Apple stock something that you can lend against, something that you can trade? How does that compare to a piece of gold? This is a broader question. And then just to kind of shape the conversation, a lot of people think of, is the future something going to be analog money versus digital money? When in reality, most of the money today is all digital. There was 92% of the money in the world today is digital money. And actually, I should rephrase that. That's from 10 years ago. So just imagine where we're at this point. How much is actually cash that you hold in your hand, and how much is a unit of account on some bank's data spreadsheet? And so really what we're getting into with crypto is government money that the government's backed by their military power, versus open source money, money that is backed by math plus energy.
Yep, that's pretty good. So
pretty much yeah.
Like every single stable currency in the world has no actual backing. Ever since we left the gold standard, it's safe to say that Bitcoin, crypto, or anything is just as valuable or invaluable as like the dollar. It's really based on fate, really.
So what was the purpose of creating crypto?
So I think it starts maybe with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is arguably, I guess, the first or one of the first. So Bitcoin was like a decentralized way of sending and receiving funds without going through the government, right? Without dealing with, the Fed. Every time you send a wire, it goes to the Fed. There's a peer-to-peer system to send something back and forth. In actuality, Bitcoin's really just an open source ledger. Picture it as like a giant data database, a blockchain, which we'll go into, I'm sure, later, but it's just a ledger. So every single transaction that ever happens on the blockchain is actually recorded. So it's actually not crypto at all. It's really transparent. Since the first transaction to the last transaction, it's all noted on the blockchain or the ledger. And that ledger states who has the currency or who has the data, so to speak. So I guess Bitcoin originally was created as a way, again, like Jeremy was saying, is for peers to peers to send or exchange a value to each other without using the government. Decentralized, open source way of sending money back and forth.
And that leads right into our next question, which is what is the blockchain? Any other description to add to that? Scott, you want to take that one?
Sure. So the blockchain is kind of what makes Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies distinct from fiat. So fiat money means like dollars, euros, that's called fiat. What makes it distinct is that, Bitcoin, for example, is on a blockchain. In simple terms, it's really just what it sounds like. It's a chain of blocks. And what a block is a list of transactions. And there's only a certain amount of transactions that can fit in one block. As soon as that's full, a new block is created with new transactions, and that new block connects to the previous block. So like that new block can reference all the previous history. So you can actually see any transaction that's ever happened in any cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever it is, because it's all a public ledger, as was explained earlier. So that's really all blockchain is. And then it's secured, and we'll get into this a bit later, but it's secured by Bitcoin mining, which I'm sure you've heard of. But essentially, the real innovation with Bitcoin and with crypto is that, as opposed to like a bank account, that can get hacked, or like the bank can, be compromised, because the ledger is distributed through this blockchain technology, it's immutable, which means you can't hack it. The only way you could hack it is if you took over 50% of the computing power in the world, essentially, which is not even Google could do that. But it's long story short, blockchain is just a chain of all the transactions that have happened in the history of the currency. And it's, it's too advanced for the scope of this course, but the computing behind it makes it so that you can't hack it, and it's immutable and permanent, essentially.
Can I dial it back? Can I share my screen real quick, Michael?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So this is a blockchain is just a database. If we want to be really simple, I think that's something a lot of people can wrap their heads around. If you've ever gone in Google Sheets, right here, this is a database of our website, My Philadelphia Photo. In this database, I have all of these basically folders, and then we go into a folder. Right here is, there's something I wanted to hit on. So here's a table. We just started a new function on our website that allows you to type in a zip code for your the location where you're shooting at, and it'll go through a list of all of our photographers and who has that zip code within their area. That's what this is. It looks very plain and boring, but here's all these zip codes, and they have all these IDs, and it's a way for all these databases to talk to each other. Blockchain, so if you look at this, it's like a tree of different things that all, or maybe even a cloud of all things connecting. A blockchain is like a linear. It's one line, it's block after block after block after block. And each time you put something in it, it then builds a new block a little bit later. And a few things that has a whole lot of positives to it. One thing I want to point out, it brought up 51% computing power. That's completely based on however many computers you have essentially backing your blockchain. You only need 51% of those. So say we have 10 computers that are all running our blockchain. If somebody else wanted to take 6 computers and go in and start basically corrupting our system, they could do that. So that's a huge difference. When you say immutable, when you say that you can't change this, that we're talking more about Bitcoin than we are about blockchain. With Bitcoin's gotten to the point, we're going to get into it, but yeah, I'll just skip over that. I don't want to be too long. And let me just take a step back and say there's so much important information here, and all of us are going to be doing our best jobs to like answer these questions in 30 seconds. And it's just not worth it. Well, no, it's definitely worth it, but just to let you guys know, there's a lot more here that is worth getting into, and hopefully we can get into it in more courses. So now I'm going to shut up.
All right, thank you. So what is Bitcoin? What are some other types of cryptocurrencies? And what's the difference between them?
Who wants to go? I mean, I can start, but I'm sure the others might add to this. So Bitcoin is the one that's, well, so the Bitcoin blockchain is the only blockchain, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the only blockchain that can technically not be manipulated, right? So blockchain technology is out there. Anyone can create a blockchain, right? All these other companies are starting to use it as a way, as a database, as a ledger. But Bitcoin blockchain, the founder or the creator just disappeared and kind of left it as an open source for everyone to see, and therefore it's not manipulated. The other blockchains or the other, so there's coins and there's blockchains that come from coins, right? So there's Ethereum, Bitcoin, Polygon, there's a few that are the blockchains, and then the other coins are all kind of come off those chains in some way or use that blockchain in some fashion. The blockchain technology, the others are manipulative. There's a founder behind it. There's someone who, like Ethereum, there's someone who created that blockchain, and he's still there and he still exists. So and if he wants to change the blockchain or the rules of the blockchain, theoretically, he can do that. Where Bitcoin is the only one that does not have that person anymore, or at least we don't know who he is or she. So that's kind of what makes Bitcoin a bit more, in my mind, something that's going to really, it's the one that I think is the purest of them all in a sense. But you guys can go on about the other coins because I don't mess with them too much, because you can make a lot of money off them trading them, but I feel Bitcoin is the one that's going to be here to the end.
Yeah, and that person was Satoshi Nakamoto, or the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. And it was created in 2009. Crap, so that was like not that long ago. But yeah, he just kind of like disappeared. And you are right, it's the only truly like decentralized where no entity kind of controls it, and it's really controlled by the world right now. And everybody else kind of has like a part in it, who's buying, selling, mining, and everything like that.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, part of the lore of Bitcoin is that the original wallets that Satoshi Nakamoto owns have never been touched or moved, but technically whoever it is probably like a trillionaire or something like that. But a lot of people, his last message to the world was in like 2014. So a lot of people think that whoever it was actually died and that those are forever gone. Just a tidbit thrown out there. But I can add a little bit about the other cryptocurrencies as well. So Bitcoin was like, obviously, as was said, was like the first big one, you know, pretty much the first crypto to take advantage of blockchain technology. And, you know, all it simplified, it's decentralized peer-to-peer currency. But the other things you hear about, like maybe Ethereum, Chainlink, other stuff that you may see, there are those are other things that are decentralized that are not necessarily meant to be peer-to-peer cash. For example, Ethereum, which is the second biggest crypto in the world right now, is a decentralized supercomputer. Essentially, it's basically, instead of a ledger of a list of transactions like Bitcoin is, Ethereum is a list of all the computing transactions, if you want to call it that is, you know, shared by everyone who's on the network. And actually, most cryptos that you may have heard of are built on top of the Ethereum network, if that makes sense. They're like programs built on this supercomputer. So like Chainlink is built on top of Ethereum. Almost like, I'd say like almost like 90% of the ones that you've heard of are probably on these other on Ethereum, but they serve other purposes. So, you know, Ethereum is for decentralized computing. So, you know, you can have censorship-free applications and websites, for example. There's decentralized lending, which we'll get into a little bit later, which is DeFi, decentralized finance. So, everything is basically cutting out a middleman, and the currency that's associated with all of these different tokens is used to power that ecosystem. Essentially, it's not meant as peer-to-peer cash as much as it is to be able to use you pay these currencies to use the network. So if you pay a Chainlink token, it's because you want to use the Chainlink network. If you're paying an Ether token, it's because you want to use the Ethereum network, if that makes sense.
There's a great summary. I was fortunate enough to record an interview with Lane Reddick, who is one of the top developers on the Ethereum project. And the way he kind of divided it is he said Bitcoin was meant to replace money, and in his eyes, Ethereum was meant to replace institutions. So what does that mean? Institutions. Banking is an institution. Scott brought up DeFi as different ways that you can use money to lend, to stake, to do different things. You can even say government is obviously an institution. Cars, the car authority, real estate. These are where you start to really kind of run away with different ideas on how a blockchain might be able to replace those. But that's an entirely different discussion that I'll leave for another time. The last thing I want to do, Laura brought up 2009, Bitcoin being invented. And I would say if you zoom out, rather than looking at it as 2009 Bitcoin starts, and then here we are like 12 years later. It's very important to include the time before Bitcoin, because Bitcoin wasn't just some guy sitting at a computer. He called himself a guy for what's worth, Satoshi, but it wasn't just somebody sitting at a computer who just had this idea and made it up. For the longest time, people have been working on things. E-gold came around before that. DigiCash came around before that. There were a lot of different attempts to try to make internet money. And the biggest problem was anybody can do this. On your computer, you can go to any file, right click and hit copy and then paste somewhere else. So how would this work if we're sending files, which are basically money, to each other? How would we be able to not just receive, let's say, 1 Bitcoin, copy, paste, now I have 2 Bitcoin? So that's what Bitcoin did, was it took a lot of ideas that other people had already made, not even within this crypto stuff, within computing, within government security sector, within economic sectors, everybody writing different types of software. He brought all these ideas together, and that's what worked. And so that's kind of the beauty of Bitcoin, is that it's not just some miraculous thing that came out of nowhere, but it's based on a lot of different people's ideas that all kind of came together. And a problem that we see with a lot of these alternative cryptocurrencies is that they start to take one of the elements out. And that was the entire beauty of Bitcoin, is that it required all of these to come together in order to work and to be safe and to be decentralized. And so just as a forward, we're about to get into it, just be wary when somebody says, well, let's take this out and this will increase all of these things over here. That one thing you pull might have been the pin in the grenade. So that is my summary for that question.
Thank you, Jeremy. So what makes it valuable? What makes crypto so valuable?
I mean, I could chime in real quick. It's kind of the same. You can ask the same about the dollar. What makes the dollar valuable? A lot of people, it's a common misconception that the dollar is backed by gold or something like that, but it's really supply and demand. It's just simple economics. So like, that's what the term fiat money refers to. If you haven't heard the term, it just, supply and demand. When central banks and governments print more money, for example, they inflate the price of it and the value because there's more supply. With most cryptos, I don't want to say all of them because there's some that are infinite, but most cryptos have finite supplies, meaning, there's always a limited supply that will ever exist in the world. So, you can't just keep printing Bitcoin like you can keep printing dollars, for example. Finite supply. And so, anything with a finite supply that has demand, which it does, people are finding Bitcoin to be useful in other cryptos, there's going to be a market value for it. It's really just a supply demand to keep things simple. It's just market powers, if that makes sense.
I just want to jump in. So Bitcoin, the program that was initially created, there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever created. I think right now we're at like 18 and a half or close to 19 million Bitcoin that have been mined so far. So you have a limited number. And as we're getting closer and closer and closer to, well, it's still going to be a little while until the last one's minted, but a limited supply, increasing of demand is what's ultimately driving the price up. But there are some of these other coins that, like Dogecoin, that doesn't, there's no limit to how many could be created. So, a lot of people are refer to them as, shit coins. So, because they don't really have, the same type of value. But yeah, so.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, meme coin is
Meme
the nice
coins.
way.
Okay, sorry.
But
so like to build off of what Laura just said, the last Bitcoin will be mined in 2140. So I don't think any of us will be here. Maybe the youngest agent somehow, if there's some breakthrough technology in medicine. But every 4 years, the amount of, so the way that Bitcoin, maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit, but kept simple. The way Bitcoin is minted is by basically it's a reward to people mining new blocks to the chain. If you're the one who adds the next block, if you're chosen, you get a certain amount of Bitcoin. Right now it's 6.25, I believe. Laura can probably confirm. 6.25 Bitcoin per block that you solve, that you add. Every 4 years that gets cut in half. So it's actually programmed into the computer code, because essentially these are all computer code. It's programmed that every 4 years, it's a deflationary asset. So it's quite the opposite of government money and fiat money. So it just so happens that every 4 years, when they call it the halvenings, when the rewards are cut in half, all of a sudden the price starts coming up again, and it's like almost a predictable cycle. It just happened last December, I think, somewhere around last winter, and that's when we had that big Bitcoin run again. It's almost like hilariously predictable how it works. So every 4 years, so next 4 years from now, approximately, it will go from 6.25 to 3.125. It gets cut in half and half and half. That's why it takes so long, and that's why the last one won't be till 2140, essentially.
I'd like to hit on a value in Bitcoin that I think goes unappreciated. Bitcoin, it's really two things. Like the word can be confusing. You can say like, oh, I love food. I love this restaurant, and I also love my partner. And those can be two completely different things. With Bitcoin, when you say Bitcoin, you might be talking about two different things. So one, the most common use, I think, is the token, the digital bearer asset, the money, which is something that the panel has definitely done a great job of explaining why that is valuable. The other thing that Bitcoin can mean is the payment rails, the entire system in which it transacts in. It's a network. And as realtors, you definitely understand the value of a network. So in this case, Bitcoin is something where I could instantly send from my cell phone money to my friend in El Salvador to pay for coffee. In fact, this has happened on Twitter. Somebody in El Salvador took a picture of the UPC thing at Starbucks and posted it on Twitter and said, hey, will anybody buy my coffee today? And somebody just saw the post on Twitter and paid for it with Bitcoin, and it went right through instantly to Starbucks, and they gave the guy his coffee. That's a payment rail. That's a huge value. And so, here, I would say here in the US, this is where I start to sound very first worldly. Here in the US, we're a lot more interested in, we've got a solid transactional foundation under us. We've got credit cards, we've got Venmo, we've got all these different ways we can move money around. We've pretty much all got bank accounts. We're a lot more interested in the investment value of Bitcoin and seeing those tokens value go up and up and up and up and up. There's a whole different side of the planet that does not have banking, that gets payments sent to them from their family who's working overseas, and they have to get on a bus and travel maybe a few hours, maybe in not safe territories to get money from a Western Union or something like that, all the while having Western Union take out huge amounts of money. There's a lot of things that the value of Bitcoin as a network brings to the table. And that's just something that I think goes unappreciated sometimes, but that's something that we're seeing grow. That's something that's still, it's very early on, seeing how Bitcoin's rails are actually spreading. And that's something that I'm sure a lot of us on the panel get excited about when we hear the new news of different technologies that are being built on Bitcoin, or different ways that Bitcoin is expanding, just so that the world can be connected with instant finality. That's another thing. Also in real estate, you're aware how long transactions can actually take to process, all the different layers between banks talking to each other, between Fedwire and all these different layers of stratification of federal finality. Bitcoin in a heartbeat is instantly final.
Jeremy, you brought up, I actually think that that's a really valuable point that I don't think a lot of people think about. What I talk about when I tell people about this is like, I literally just went into my bank to send a wire the other day, and I had to go between 9 and 5 because that's when my bank's open, Monday through Friday. I had to sit there for an hour. I had to wait for somebody, and then I was charged like $50 wire fee to send my money to somebody else. You know, when you think about it, there's wire fees, debit card fees, ATM fees, credit card, I mean, like, you know, checking account fees. There's fees when my, you know, like limit reaches like a certain level. It's like, there's so many fees are associated in these financial institutions make billions of dollars off of our money. Not only that, they are taking the money that we have in the bank and they are lending it to other people. When they're making like 5% return on it, in my savings account, I think I earn like 0.005% or something like that. Like, you know, at the end of the year, I'm like, oh, I made $1. Like, so when you think about it, like these banks and lending institutions are making a lot of money off of our money. And, you know, Bitcoin was really set up as a way for us to control our own finances. And like you said, get rid of the middleman. And also, I love the point about like these people in like third world countries, they don't have access to a bank near them most of the time. They don't have access to ATMs or, you know, things like that. But there's probably more people in the world that actually do have cell phones, or at least have access to some sort of like, you know, internet somewhere where they can send and receive, you know, like these types of cryptocurrencies. So, yeah.
Totally. Another thing there too is that you brought up like the third parties that we deal with. I hate to use the word, it sounds kind of crazy these days, but surveillance. These third parties, they get to know who you're transacting with. They get to know what you're transacting about in certain situations. And
Right.
It's also kind of a map of you to potentially track you. You know, they can look and see where all these transactions happen. There's a lot of information that's gained there. And at any moment, ultimately, you can be cut off from the payment system. We've seen this happen. You know, WikiLeaks is a famous one, but maybe you think WikiLeaks deserved it. There's different, I'm from Colorado. That instantly in a lot of people's heads makes them think cannabis at this point. Being cut off from that, even though it's legal on a statutory level, it's not legal on a federal level. There were people who had their money cut off. It was Project Choke Point, was a Department of Justice action a while back to target different entities that they didn't necessarily like or weren't on a federal way legal, and cut off their money.
Sure, bank accounts can be seized and bank accounts can be frozen.
Exactly.
Whereas like when you have cryptocurrency and you have it maybe in cold storage, nobody's going to be able to access that. Nobody can like freeze your accounts, and you know, so yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these stories you see in the news, like people say like, oh, like all this Bitcoin was hacked or all this, you know, Ethereum was hacked. The networks aren't getting hacked when you see those articles. They're all like alarmist news articles. What's happening is the custodial institutions that are holding those things on behalf of people are getting hacked. So for example, if you buy Bitcoin on Coinbase.com, which is probably the most popular site to buy some common crypto, you know, Coinbase, if it got hacked, technically someone could get your username and password and, you know, do whatever they want with your stuff. Whereas if, as Laura said, if you have it in cold storage, which means if you own your own private keys, and we'll get into this later probably, off of these custodial centralized institutions, it can't get hacked. Your stuff's going to be there no matter what. Governments can't shut it down. It's always going to be in the network. That's the beauty of blockchain and crypto.
So what is mining? What is staking? We all associate mining with digging minerals out of the ground. How do you mine a digital currency?
Well, Laura is actually a miner, right? So
Yes. So yes, I am. So mining. So yes, I am a miner. But what that means is it's not physical. But if you think about it, like it's a machine, and the machine is running a very specific program that is the only use of this machine is to create Bitcoin or mine Bitcoin. And the machine is like randomly guessing, like basically a code, very, very difficult code to crack. And so these machines, they all kind of like work together. And when a machine solves the code, the machine is rewarded with what we said, 6.25 Bitcoin. But what that code is doing is it's actually helping build up the blockchain, which we talked about, certify also transactions that are happening on the blockchain. So like when I send Bitcoin to another person, that has to be verified. And the way that it's verified is it's actually verified through the machines as well. So that machine verifies the transactions, and then it is also solving the code that is helping build the blockchain, and then it's rewarded with the Bitcoin. So each, basically then, just to go a little bit further in, then the person who owns that machine is rewarded with that Bitcoin. So the person can either choose to hold on to that Bitcoin or sell the Bitcoin for cash, or just exchange it or whatever. And that was a basic form. That was a basic answer, but.
Yeah.
I can add on that too, or unless Sean, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, and by mining, you're basically the network, right? So like without miners, there'd be no network. And so as a reward of being part of the network and helping the network exist, that's why you get kind of like, so even when all the Bitcoins are mined, let's say, there are like small transaction fees, very low, that would be still taking place every time you're exchanging Bitcoin. It's not gonna be completely free, because that small transaction fee would be the reward to the miners.
Yeah, for sure. So like one way to think of it is like, imagine like all the miners at the same time, they all want to be the person that gets to add the next block. And the way that they add the next block is, as Laura said, you're trying to solve like a cryptographic puzzle, essentially. That's why it's called cryptocurrency. You're basically guessing a random string of characters, like Laura said, and hoping that it like unlocks the next block. And it's completely random probability that you guess the correct block. So that's why your proportion of the computing network in, let's say, Bitcoin, like if you own 10% of the computing power in Bitcoin, by random probability, you have a 10% chance of adding each block. It's like equivalent to your computing power in the network. And so, let's say we're all sending transactions to each other in Bitcoin. They all float in what's called the memory pool. They all float there. They're not confirmed yet. Everyone else that's mining is, if they see that transaction, they're adding it to their own block. Everyone has their own like custom block, essentially, that they're filling with transactions. And if they are the ones that solve the cryptographic puzzle, they get to add their list of transactions to the block permanently. They get their reward in Bitcoin. Everyone else gets rid of their stuff and just tries to go for the next block again. So that prevents like double spends, like people from trying to game the system and spending twice. And what happens is all the miners eventually come to a consensus through means outside the scope of this talk, but they come to a consensus where everyone's like, yeah, this is the proper, chain of events. And, as long as it's over 51%, like over half, that's the chain that people go with.
I just wanted to also add, it's very interesting because there's a lot of discussions about energy usage with the miners, because the miners are usually running like 24 hours a day, and they do take up a lot of electricity. So a lot of the people have mining farms where they kind of like pool all their resources, and they have like huge factories that are filled with these computers that are mining. like I read about El Salvador and how they've adapted to it. They're actually using volcano energy to be, more green about it, which I thought was really interesting. My miners are running off of hydroelectric power. So I think that there's people that are searching for alternative energy sources, and more ecologically friendly energy sources. Whereas, like, I think in China, that was part of the reason why most of those places got shut down, is because there was a lot of, energy usage coming from there that was not necessarily green. But yeah, it's really very interesting.
And that kind of leads into what staking is too. So mining uses something called proof of work. Doesn't matter. You don't have to get into it. But staking is a different way to mine blocks, essentially new blocks. So with mining, as we discussed, you're using computing power to solve a cryptographic puzzle. With staking, instead of using computing energy, your probability of getting chosen to add the next block is directly proportional to how much stake you have in the network, meaning how much funds you have. So for example, with Ethereum, eventually Ethereum is trying to move from a mining consensus mechanism to staking. Once they're on that, staking mechanism, what would happen is if you own 10% of the Ethereum in the world, you would have a 10% chance of getting to add the next block. So it's literally just going by how much you have. And so it completely eliminates the need for computing power and electricity. And I think it's probably going to be what most things are going to be using in the future, unless someone comes up with something even better. But it completely, it's all just randomized by computer code that way. So whereas Bitcoin, it's like your percentage of the computing power determines your probability of getting the next block reward. With proof of stake, your percentage of the ownership of the actual currency determines it.
And thus the pin was pulled from the grenade. And I'll leave that for another time as far as proof of stake goes.
All right, we are running a lot later than I thought we would at this point. So next 3 questions, Scott, I'm going to defer to you. Let's summarize as much as possible and save details for the next class. How do crypto economics work? What is DeFi? And what are NFTs?
So crypto economics, we should probably save for the next class, but it kind of is similar to what we were just discussing with mining, how new coins are minted in the network. That's probably an advanced thing. What was the second one? DeFi?
Yes.
DeFi, if you've seen that buzzword floating around, it's just short for decentralized finance. And we kind of touched on it, but it's just essentially crypto allows, since we're cutting out middlemen and decentralizing things, it allows you, it provides these financial tools that normally would not be available to many people. So for example, you can take out loans on your crypto. You can loan out your crypto to other people to take from. All these, you can do leveraged trading. You can do all these like advanced financial things you can do without a middleman, and you get insane APRs, like without getting too much into it. Because there's no middleman, like there's some APRs that are in the hundreds of percents if you're early enough to the system. So that's what decentralized finance is. And then NFTs is another buzzword. Was that the third question?
Yes.
I'm sure you guys have seen that in the news where people are buying pictures of rocks for like $6 million. So what an NFT is, it's instead of like a currency like Ethereum or Bitcoin that's just stored and meant to be like currency, it's an object that represents ownership of something, but it's represented as still a coin, a token on a blockchain. So for example, if someone can make a digital art piece like that digital picture of a rock that was in the news, and sell it for a certain amount of Ethereum, Ether, that is permanently stored in the Ethereum supercomputer, blockchain, and you can prove authenticity, that you're the owner. This is the authentic one, and if someone tries to copy it, they can't prove that it's real. And obviously, this has better uses for like real art too, not just like pictures of rocks, but for like real digital artists who are making these crazy works, it helps to prove a chain of ownership. And it's digital scarcity, if that makes sense. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Actually, I just wanted to inject something here. So I just read that there was a piece of real estate that was sold via an NFT because somebody used Ethereum to buy the NFT that represented the property. And so it was just very interesting. And as real estate agents, I think that we might be seeing more and more of this in the future. So
I would just say, don't run too far with that idea, because we're talking about a physical thing, real estate, in which case, what happens if you lose the token? Does that mean you don't own the house anymore? So there's got to be some authority that's dictating that. What happens if a police officer walks into your house and puts a gun to you and says, you're trespassing on private property? You can say, you pull out your phone, no, I own the token, this is mine. And he says, sorry, that's not correct. You're going to jail. There's just, there's a huge divide between the real world and all the things that we value in the real world and the digital world. And that's a divide that honestly, most things, and this, we could say this from another class, most things can't bridge that. And so there's a lot of people who are offering, this goes back to Laura's word, I'll say scam coins, projects where they say, hey, buy my token, give me your money, because I am reinventing real estate. You can now sell these and tokens here, there. And at the end of the day, your token really means nothing because it's a real world authority that actually has to dictate the real world possession. That's the difference between digital bearer assets, as we brought up, because you hold this digital item, you own it, and physical bearer assets like a house, like a car, like a table, which you can't buy anymore because of supply chain problems. And we'll leave that for another show too.
I think the main takeaway with that is just that it's not necessarily legally recognized, even though you can hypothetically prove, yes, I own this token by looking at the Ethereum blockchain and providing a digital signature. It might mean nothing to a government, so for now, they're mostly used as for digital ownership of things.
And then, sorry, last point that Scott just made me think of is I just showed you guys a database. It's running the My Philadelphia Photo website. There's so much that the world has not done yet, just with the same technology that we've had for 50 years. We're still seeing things, real estate in particular, really needs a software revolution to it. But in most cases, my belief, in most cases, a centralized database like the one I just showed you is far better than some sort of blockchain. We went into that you can't even change the record except for every 10 minutes. Imagine if I couldn't go into my website and change something. I had to wait for 10 minutes just to make a change to it. So there's a lot that this world is still gonna figure out on its own with traditional software, and we're still getting there. And blockchain technology is really a terrible, it's probably the worst database ever invented for most use cases.
I will say that some blockchains though are like since they're built differently. So with Bitcoin, it's every 10 minutes, but Ethereum, every block is 15 seconds. And I've used some like on Cosmos that is like 0.001 seconds. There's usually some kind of, something that offsets to allow that, like less security or something, but they're trying to get there. But at this point, he's correct. Like it's completely correct. It's not practical.
Well, and so that also opens up the ideal that the technological qualities of a cryptocurrency are there to prop up the monetary values of the cryptocurrency. It's the monetary value that matters. And so there's a lot of these things like, oh, we're this much faster, but it doesn't matter, but because it's the monetary value. It's the monetary value of Bitcoin that is truly valuable. And within Bitcoin, they build on top of it. So that's why a guy can buy a Starbucks instantly. They can buy a McDonald's instantly because there was a second layer built onto Bitcoin to allow it to be as fast as it needed to be. And so again, all these other scam coins or alternative projects can tend to try and pitch you on the technological side and say, oh, we're faster or bigger or whatever. But that doesn't really matter, because the only thing really bringing value to a cryptocurrency is, like we talked about before, the monetary policy of, say, Bitcoin, and then the rail system that it's built on. And that's just to support it. Sorry, we could go on forever. We need some drinks. We need to do this at a restaurant or something, and have some natural fun rather than being in front of a computer.
We've got about 4 minutes till we move into Q&A. So I'm sure everybody wants to know, what is a good place to go to buy and sell crypto?
Okay, so I'm gonna throw this out because I try to make all my friends do it, including Michael. When we were drunk, I got him to start. So basically, I tell everybody just start. Like, don't think too much about it, and then look into it later. Like, it's not going anywhere. The last Bitcoin's not going to be mine until 2140. So it's like people are still like, oh, it's too late. It's too late. Just if you're interested, I mean, with anything comes risk, right? Any investment, there's always risk. So don't like put all your eggs in one basket, but just set it and forget it is like my strategy. Just like, so you can buy them anywhere now very easily. Venmo, Coinbase, Cash App, PayPal, they're all going to charge you some sort of fee. I'm not as keen on all the fees. I believe Cash App's probably one of the cheapest or the cost effective, but they only do Bitcoin, where like Venmo does some of the other cryptos. But you could set it for 25 bucks a week, 50 bucks a week. You could do it right now and literally forget about it. And in 5 years from now, go, thank you, Sean. Maybe. I'm assuming that's what you're going to do. Because that's what I did, and I'm very happy I did that, 10 years ago. So I just recommend doing it. Coinbase, again, like they were saying, like when you do it with any of these exchanges, you're basically parking your money on their exchange. So you want something that's more like reputable in a sense, where because like if you have your money on E-Trade gets hacked or whatever, you're secured by the FDIC. You're going to get your money back, right? So these other exchanges, anything can happen. I've lost a lot of Bitcoin trading on an exchange that got shut down by the FBI. It was not fun, but it wasn't the Bitcoin's fault. It was the website's fault, right? They were the ones who were doing something wrong. So anyway, that said, the best thing to do is go on one of these, and maybe someone has the most ideal, but set it, forget it, 50 bucks every 2 weeks, 100 bucks a month, whatever you're comfortable with, and just don't look back. And that's one way to get started, and just investing and not trading, because trading is a whole nother world, and you can easily lose everything. Because if I never traded, I would be a millionaire today. So I don't necessarily like trading anymore. I'm scared of it.
Yeah, Sean's completely correct. It's kind of similar to real estate. Time in market is better than timing the market with crypto. If you buy crypto now, you're still early. It's not too late. You want to so I think the consensus these days is to store your crypto in a cold wallet without getting too into it. It's like this is the most popular one. I don't know if you can see this. It's called a ledger, and it's just literally this doesn't store your crypto, but it unlocks your ability to send it. It's like your private key is stored on here. So if I lose this, I still have my crypto. I would just have to import it I would get another one. But it's called a Ledger Nano. Buy directly from the site. If you buy one, don't buy third party because they could be compromised. But yeah, once you find, if you do your research and there's a crypto you want to put your money into, time in market is better than time in the market. So
cost average, like anything, like
the
Dow Jones, NASDAQ, cost average. Just buy it every week. Don't look at the price and forget about it.
Oh, and a pro tip: if you use Coinbase Pro instead of Coinbase, the fees are way cheaper. And it's free. It's called Coinbase Pro. It's free. They don't tell you about it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Coinbase. I think you have to have Coinbase first.
Right? Yeah, they link to each other.
Yeah. So I like Coinbase. You can learn about other cryptocurrencies. And when you watch these videos and they give you free crypto, they give you $3 free in other crypto. So it's actually really informative. So you can start there and then go to Coinbase Pro for lesser fees.
Yeah, Coinbase is the most popular for Americans. Then there's ways, this will be for the advanced class, but there's ways of before crypto gets onto Coinbase, you can get in real early if you learn how to do something called a swap, and we could do that in advanced class, but that's how I've had most of my success, like getting in things like way earlier, you know. So
Same.
Awesome. Sean, I think the best piece of advice you gave me when deciding how much to invest, again, 1 o'clock in the morning at a bar, was add up all of my subscriptions to stuff. What can I eliminate and take that amount, and that's what I invest. Then set it, forget it. I'll never miss that money. And in 5 years, hopefully I'll be praising it.
Shiba Inu.
All right. Chris Summers was sad that he couldn't be here for this, but he did share a video. I know Sean mentioned he does not like trading and stocks, but we all know Chris is very into it. So I just want to share that with everybody.
And to premise that, Michael, his video, he talks about different ways that you can get exposure to the Bitcoin price, like to make money off of Bitcoin going up and down without having to buy Bitcoin.
Just buy Bitcoin.
Hey guys, I apologize. I'm going to be missing this high-level crypto meeting today. Speaker of investments, I will be closing bell ceremony on that stuff. You'll see
Michael,
me
we can't
live
hear
or on Zoom and person in the future.
You can't hear?
People here
It's
today.
not, it's like really low.
Okay, let me see.
I can sum it up if you want.
Should have tested it earlier, huh?
Do you want to leave it like plain visually and then I'll insert words?
Got out the song on them.
Is that any better?
Very, very early. Very early
Oh,
when
you
it's
got
inception.
that
That's what I wanted to say here.
sound bar at the
That's
top.
what you pointed out, like,
At the top.
All right, how about I'll share the video in the chat and you can all save and watch it. How about that?
Perfect.
hey guys,
Okay, lastly, join us next month, Advanced Crypto. We'll dive further into this. And in December, keep an eye out for Chris Summers and understanding the stock market. So let's open it up now for a Q&A. Stop sharing. Okay, feel free to raise your hand if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask. If you don't know how to raise your hand, click on the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you'll have the option to raise your hand. Emerald.
Hello. I'm not sure if this is an advanced question or if this is a beginner question, but I wanted to know about nodes, or how do you create a node, and if anyone knows about them.
So a
I
node.
didn't hear the word.
What's that?
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear the word.
Node.
Create what?
N-O-D-E-S.
Yes, that is correct.
So a node, to everyone else, would be like basically a point in the network. So like if I have a Bitcoin wallet, like that could be considered a node, or like every miner would be a node, really. So like Lara's mining rig, like that's a node in the network. So I mean, to create a node, you should probably, Lara can probably answer better than I can. I mean, for Bitcoin at least, it kind of depends. They differ depending on which crypto you're talking about.
We can put together a list in the notes for this. I think we're probably going to post this to YouTube. We can at least do it there. And yeah, it's basically you have a computer of any size. You can do it with Raspberry Pis. They're these tiny, tiny little computers. And all that you're doing is you're downloading the entire blockchain of, in this case, Bitcoin. And then you just have it talk. It starts connecting through internet. So you need internet, and you just need some space on your computer for it to download into. And it'll just run all day long, talking to all the other nodes. And we can definitely put a link there to where you can download the node. And you could download it, go through the step-by-step process, and voila, you have a node up and running. And the advantage of this, of nodes, is that you can personally use your node to verify any transaction. So if Scott sends me some Bitcoin, and he shows me, we meet up in a parking lot or whatever, and he's like, okay, I just sent you a Bitcoin. And I'm like, well, I don't know if he actually did, or if he pulled some sort of like trick to make it look like it happened. I can go dial into my node and see right there, yeah, my node, which is a part of the entire network, verified that he did send it, and now we're A-okay. So like as things progress, as the network progresses, you might start seeing a lot more nodes. You know, businesses that are accepting Bitcoin will probably be running nodes. Maybe even they talk about every family home. You know, you just have a little computer there to the side that is your node that you're allowed to that you can use to check transactions. So that's a great question, and we can put it in the show notes, and you can just download it, start running the program, and you've got a node up and running. And just to clarify, that's not mining. So you would not be mining and making Bitcoin from it. It's purely for you to check the status of the network and approve transactions.
So in other words, if I have a drone website, so on my drone website, I accept BitPay, which actually consists of all of the cryptocurrencies as far as a form of payment. I could actually, let's say I have, sorry, I live on Cobbs Creek. It's like the Daytona 500 out here. But I have quite a few laptops around the house that I'm not even using anymore, and maybe 5, 6 years old. Can I like clear them all off and then use those?
Yeah, just one of them, as long as it has enough memory, disk space. Absolutely. And then anything that you get through your BitPay, if somebody does pay you in Bitcoin, you could immediately pull up, you know, the interface for your node and see, boop, it just went through, and you verified it, as opposed to just like, you know, guessing and hoping that it was a legitimate transaction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else got any questions for us? Awesome, you guys did such a good job. Nobody has any questions?
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Sean, Laura, Jeremy, Scott, for being here, for sharing your information. And we'll see you again in November.
Shiba Inu to the moon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
I think Ryan's on the moon right now, for the sound of it.
Yeah,
Definitely sounds like it.
I was lucky with that one. That was a lucky one. Hey guys.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.